If Adam and Eve never sinned, would we have to wear clothes? What do you think?
I think we would not. Now, this is kind of a stretch, but when Moses was talking face to face with God and he would come down from the mountain, he had to wear a veil because he was glowing. If we were in God's presence with, like, Moses was still separated from God to a degree that Adam and Eve weren't. Mm-hmm. I believe that we would glow and we wouldn't need clothes because there'd be this light just emanating from us and we wouldn't need clothes. Not only would we not feel shame or embarrassment, which is why we wear clothes now, but that we also would not even notice. You know, there was something different when Adam and Eve noticed they were naked. So something changed. Obviously, they recognized that that was shameful somehow, but I think it's also that God's presence was removed. And so I think, no, we would not wear clothes. So heaven might be interesting.
Agree. Yeah.
We will see. I'm trusting God that it won't be weird and uncomfortable.
No shame, no condemnation. Yeah, there's a verse that I think is kind of funny in the way that it's worded is God says after he sinned, God says, why were you hiding? And what were you doing? He's like, well, I was ashamed because I was naked. And God says, who told you you were naked? Like, you've been naked this whole time. Who told you that? You know, but apparently he realized it and he felt that shame. And then God in his mercy made them covering, you know, and he didn't have to do that. What fruit did Adam and Eve eat? What you think?
Well, I don't think it was an apple because apples weren't indigenous to that area. We think the Garden of Eden was probably somewhere in Africa, Middle East, like somewhere in that region. And that wouldn't have been a fruit popular there. Some people theorize that it was a fig because God then used fig leaves to make their clothes.
I never thought of that.
So that could have been a pomegranate. I don't know. He doesn't say. Although a pomegranate, you kind of break it open and eat the seeds. So it's not like you take a bite. So that leads me to think fig. But that's probably the best guess I have is one of those kind of Middle Eastern kind of food. Maybe could have been a date. You know, something like that.
Yeah, that's a good guess. Well, it's interesting if you think it's a fig and then you think about how Jesus cursed the fig tree, that maybe that, like, pulling all that together, maybe so. Could be. That's a good, I've never thought of that before. That's a good thought. I like that.
Yeah, God does do that, where he pulls things together like that in ways that we don't even see is happening. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, like I had a moment when I was reading through the Bible a couple times ago, and I was reading in Psalm 107, and there's a whole passage of them, a bunch of people being on a boat. The boat is rocking in the storms and they're terrified. And God says, be still. And the waves stop. And I was like, that sounds a lot like Jesus on the boat with the disciples. And I went and read the stories and compared the two. And I thought, oh, so what Jesus was saying was, I'm God.
Right.
It wasn't just look at what I can do. It was literally so close to the exact story from Psalm 107 that Jesus wanted them to see the parallel and recognize, not only can I, you know, who is that he that the wind and waves obey, but that they knew the answer to that question was only God.
Right. And I love that. Yeah. How Jesus, so many times you see him quote things from the Old Testament, because you know that the scholars of the day and those who had grown up learning the Old Testament, they would have known exactly what he was talking about. You know, there was no confusion there about, even though, and a lot of Muslim people will say, well, where does it say in the Bible that Jesus said, I am God, worship me? Well, he didn't say those exact words, but he showed it in so many of the things that he said. And like you said, what he quoted, God's words from the Old Testament. Even like when he was hanging on the cross and he was quoting that, my God, why have you forsaken me? That coming from the Psalm. And so many things that Jesus did, or when he says, I forgive sins, or I'm the Lord of the Sabbath, those are things that they knew. Okay, this is he's claiming to be God in what he's saying here. He's not, he's not beating around the bush about it. He's not being ambiguous. It's plain in the way that he's communicating to the people of that time.
Yeah.
So I think